An Irish independent digital subscription doesn't just get you the news. It gets you the best of Ireland's stories all in one place. Whether it's the best of politics, business, sport, entertainment or lifestyle. Get it all for just €4 a month for 12 months when you first subscribe. Visit independent.ie/subscribe today. Irish Independent. Terms and conditions apply. Cancel anytime.
Chilled out though.
No, I get it. Ooh, the room's cold.
Yeah, I just turned it off there.
It's nice. Ever a man has skipped into studio today, Conor Darty.
No sleep, just looking at tweets all night.
We've no time to talk about us.
What?
Exactly. Very good. Very good. Paul, love it. Love you bringing that stuff. That's great. Yeah. No, listen, for sure. Let me see what I'm doing. Just if you're thinking after like 40 seconds, it's like, is that all the Villa we're doing? It's we'll kind of come back to it because talk to you about it almost in a bit more depth for like 3, 4 or 5 minutes, whatever we want to do. That's my thinking anyway.
3, 4, 5 minutes, 10, 15, 20, whatever you think.
Yeah. Cancel Gary Breen. Okay. We give it a go. Day 4 of our shiny new venture. Prince William's never felt better. Conor Darty, Derry to his core, and Prince William shared an experience last night. Jeez Louise, they don't get there often, but when they do, Aston Villa, it's a European love affair. You danced into the office today. I thought you'd be insufferable. You've been okay.
I think I play this card every so often then, you know, once you get to where you want to go, you just play the smug card in every so often. I imagine it's even more annoying for you.
It was amazing. I mean, it really was. So Gary Breen's going to join us later on. He will be talking Aston Villa, Arsenal, dreaded international week looming. Heimer Hallgrimsson talking today to the media, so that is on the way very shortly. I'll come back to you in Villa. I have any other business first, if that's okay.
Let's do it.
Emails hopping. In no particular order, Shane Smullen emailed in to say, "Hi Joe, I would love to see." We were talking obviously yesterday about the International Rules series. For context, Conor McKeown and Colm Keys were in really good chat with the boys. They weren't so sure about the International Rules revival, and there were whispers of it. And so Shane had said, "I'd love to see the All-Ireland champions versus the AFL champions. I would be much more interested in seeing that. Best versus the best." I wasn't so sure about. I do think they're champions at a different sport, for one. And then, more so than anything, the opportunity to represent Ireland is just so appealing. And if you're from a weaker county, it's such a slap in the face. It's like, here's another thing you don't get to do.
Yeah. The international rules thing, we talked about what was most interesting about it, unfortunately, is the violence and the flashpoints.
Yeah.
The other thing that was always most appealing to me was picking an Ireland team. So who gets picked, especially from all these other counties, these players who are definitely good enough to play with the best. But you could probably do that without having to play a hybrid sport. You could probably do that without having to play Australia. I mean, if you look at the American example, the All-Star game that they play mid-season, you know, West versus East, it's amazing. It's a big occasion. It's an honour to get picked as one of the All-Star squad, and it's competitive. We could probably do something like that, and I don't mean just rehash the Railway Cup again.
I was thinking that sounds a bit familiar. It didn't work.
But maybe you draw a line somewhere across the country and then you put together two teams.
Yeah, I don't know. The general consensus in the office today, obviously people had heard the podcast and several came over to say, without the fights, no thanks, is the unfortunate feeling out there. There was a time, so if I had said to you the word Gunter, you would think the dude in Central Perk who loved Rachel.
Yeah.
You know. So he's been superseded in some respects in more recent years by the other Gunter, Steiner. Oh, and by the way, kids in the car, I would think about just skipping through the next 20 seconds.
Fuck. 4th and 5th, but Gene, we finished 4th and 5th here. We fucking look like rock stars, huh? And now we are a fucking bunch of wankers. Yeah, bunch of fucking clowns here. The car was not a piece of shit. So why did we develop a car which fucking goes slower? Find out the problem and make progress out of it instead of this is better. It isn't this is better. It fucking isn't. He's not fucking doing that to me, you know? He does not fuck smash my door. Tell him that. How many assistants have you got, Fred? I have nobody because I have no money. And you've got 3 people running around you. Yeah. Another one coming. It's 4 now. You're so stupid.
Gunter Steiner. He's on the show next Wednesday.
Brilliant.
Shane has worked a little bit of magic. He was putting out some feelers. So Gunter Steiner going to join us for a conversation next week. If you're not an F1 fan, you've probably seen him on Drive to Survive. He was the best thing about Drive to Survive by a considerable distance. He was the team principal of Haas for 7 years until last year. And he's got a book out, so we kind of said, do you want to come on and talk about things? He does not have fond memories of Gene. This is Gene Haas. They're suing each other at the moment.
Yeah.
So I think Haas are suing Gunter over some kind of copyright issue in his book. May have been just dismissed, that case. But then Gunter is suing Haas for using his imagery still on the merchandise they're selling, because he's still the most popular thing about Haas. So it hasn't ended well. There's a dedication on the inside page of his book which says, "For my family and for all the guys at Haas F1 past and present," which is nice. But then there's an asterisk, and at the bottom of the page it says, "Except Eugene."
He's brilliant. I mean, you said he's the best thing about it. He's the main character of that show. I mean, for non-F1 fans, he put Haas on the map. Yeah. And I think the reason he was so popular is that he resonated. Like, Gunther was the everyman on this show in this mega rich sport that you couldn't aspire to, world that you wouldn't, really live in. Gunther was somebody who was dealing with budget constraints, dealing with a tough manager, just trying to get by day to day, and everything going wrong, and everybody related to that.
Yeah, we'll talk to him on Wednesday. I'm very conscious to know to what extent he realised what he was doing. He was so unvarnished. Obviously, did he think people are going to love this, or was he like a little bit? The cameras, whatever. I'm not going to edit my behaviour too much. But either way, it landed. I think you're right about that everyman quality. There was a degree where we all at some point have been Gunther and thinking, oh no, I've got to phone Gene. Yeah. That was another shit show. Yeah. I've got to phone Gene.
Yeah. And hey, Gene, I'm with you. I agree. This is a shit
Gene,
show.
It's shit, Gene. No one thinks it's shitter than me. So he's on, and look, I don't know what to talk to him about. If you're an F1 fan, actually, by all means, because it's not necessarily my beat week in, week out, then Indosport podcast at independent.ie. If there's anything that I should absolutely 100% ask Gunter Steiner, then let me know. Apparently Shane was saying that in the book, all the F words, and there are lots of them, are spelled F-O-K.
Brilliant. Just phonetically for us.
You can hear it, and smell it and feel it. He's a son of a butcher. Gunter, that's his background.
Ask him what we should name the show on a Monday.
Yeah, so on that point, on the emails point generally, I received good news and bad news this morning. So I had, in a kind of fit of fresh enthusiasm, replied to a lot of people.
Wow. Yeah. You're an everyman as well,
well, look, you said it. Touch of class from Malloy. I emailed a whole bunch of people back because some of them had just sent nice wishes or good looks, and some had said, some of the suggestions I thought, what, on reflection, not as terrible as my initial reaction may have betrayed. Yeah. And, like I'd say 25, 30 emails this morning, sent them, thought, well, that's a good deed for the day, and went away and made my coffee, and I came back. And then I just checked the sent inbox, and it's just a raft of undeliverable. Shane looked into it, he said, look, good news. It's been resolved. That's fixed. Bad news. You'll have to send all those emails again.
Oh, no.
Not happening.
Gene, nobody got their emails, Gene. I swear to God.
Nobody's more upset about this than me. So I don't know. Do I do it? Maybe I do it again. It's a lot to have to go back and send all those emails again. Yeah. But a lot of people today, you got an email from me that you never got.
I sort of think you do need to send it now, because there's going to be a lot of people who weren't expecting an email from me. Now I think, you might go back and send that now.
Oh, maybe. I might just copy and paste. Thanks, best Joe. On the not the Monday panel situation, it's now a saga, really. So on YouTube, poll fired over a bunch of these from YouTube. So somebody said, call it sport talk. Spelt like talk sport. D. Keane suggested on the ball.
I like that. That's very clever.
Very, yeah. The Joe Show, that's kind of taken. I did, when I had to think about it, I did genuinely think to myself, Aidan O'Hara's suggestion of the Monday morning cornerback is really strong.
It's brilliant.
And if we don't take it as a general sports show, if there's not a GAA podcast in the next 2 weeks called the Monday morning cornerback, then somebody's just not trying, because it's good.
I just suddenly got nerves to rush out of here and just start that right now.
And so that's where we are. I'm still not unfond of organised fun. Organised fun. Time for organised fun. I can sort of feel myself saying that. Just a final thought from Paul in Mullingar, who said, "Congratulations, great start, loving the show. Thank you, Paul." Worryingly, he then said, "I'm currently listening to an Alan Partridge audiobook." And I thought, uh-oh.
and I thought of you.
Yeah. Which he says is brilliant. I've never done the Alan Partridge thing, have you?
Oh, brilliant. Yeah.
The audiobooks.
Oh, no, not the audiobook, sorry.
The show for sure.
Yeah.
But the audiobooks never
No.
reached out and grabbed me. But I've heard they're really, really good. But Paul's enjoying the audiobooks, which is brilliant. Anyway, he talks about the different names that he's thinking of calling his house in said audiobook. Excalibur, Manor House, Alan's House, etc. In the end, he just picked Classic House. My point here is that the obvious answer is often the best. I therefore put forward my case for the Monday panel naming debacle. My answer is to avoid reminding us that it is in fact Monday and simply call it the Weekend Review. Thank you for your work, Paul from Mullingar. Simplicity.
The Weekend Review.
I mean, is it so bad it's kind of ironically good? I don't know, perhaps. A bit like the running order.
I think we were closer with not the Monday panel.
I think that's at the moment I'm with organised fun.
Yeah. Yeah, knock a bit of structure into it. What's the leading lights? We got running order. We've got organised fun.
And not the Monday panel.
And Monday morning cornerback?
No, I think that's too GA specific. Unfortunately. It is with regret.
Okay.
Yeah.
So because not the Monday panel, to Dan's concerns, it's fine if it's on a Tuesday now, if it's a bank holiday Monday. It's not the Monday panel.
Fair point. Okay.
There it is, full time. It's one of Aston Villa's great nights. And the team they beat in the final in 1982, Bayern Munich, have been beaten tonight thanks to a wonder goal from John Duran at Villa Park. Emery receives the adulation from the crowd. Martinez gets the hugs from his teammates. And John Duran's name is up in lights in the second city tonight. He's come off the bench. He's 20 years of age, all the way from Colombia. And he scored one of the great European goals for Aston Villa. What a night. Full time. Aston Villa 1. Bayern Munich 0.
Crowd kind of amazing at the end. On Prince William. I'll get on to the good stuff in a second. How self-conscious do you think he is? He's obviously incredibly aware that the cameras are on him a lot. He's obviously aware that there's a general PR aspect to his job. Like, this isn't, Rod Stewart goes to a Celtic game. He doesn't really care if you catch him in the throes of celebrations or if he's picking his nose. It doesn't really matter. But for Prince William, where imagery is about 95% of the job, he must be keenly aware that I need to display my common touch credentials here, my genuine understanding of football and love for Aston Villa. And I thought it was a self-conscious display I felt from Prince William. He knew I'm on screen a lot. And if he didn't know initially, he would have received a message from somebody to say, Your Highness, just to let you know, this is happening, so be aware.
I always wondered sort of the train that he's on now. Like, did he go to a match because he wanted to go to a match? Did he go to a match for that reason? You said it'd be good for me to get out of the capital, go down the country, go to a match. And then it sort of became a weight of expectation then that he had to continue to show his common touch, because that's one of the things that himself and Harry had always been praised for, that they were, they were one of us. Almost, I say that with a big pinch of salt.
Fresh, young.
Yeah. But there is also an element of he's been with Aston Villa through the dull days as well. I mean, he was going to championship matches when it would have been easy for him to just exit stage left. And
so it's a sincere thing, you feel?
Yeah, Villa were down there for 3 years. You know, when they came back up, people might not have even remembered that he was still a fan. But yeah, there was those famous scenes of him, and it did look like he forgot the cameras were on after he got promoted, and him and John Carew hugging, and yeah, it's really nice moments over the years of him. And Emery speaks very highly of him as well.
Because I was just curious. I suspect, like a lot of people, you don't really think too much about his Villa connections all that often. So I googled actually, why is Prince William, and straight away the suggestion was an Aston Villa fan. So he talked about he has friends who support Villa, and the first game he went to was an FA Cup game, Bolton Aston Villa back in 2000. That was the year they got to the final. Lost to Chelsea.
Yeah, 1-0.
He said it was fantastic. I sat with all the fans, my friends. I had my red beanie cap on. I sat with all the Brummie fans, and I had a great time. It was the atmosphere, the camaraderie. I really felt there was something I could connect with. So that's his story, and he's sticking to it. I mean, it is such a strange existence, and he must be acutely aware of the PR war. Did you ever read Spare?
No.
It's really good. This is Prince Harry's book. And I'm not a big royalist as such. I'm vaguely interested in them, I guess, like your average person. But the fact that J.R. Mowringer was the author sucked me right in. He of the Agassi book fame, which is just about creme de la creme. So I figured everything this guy ever does is excellent. Like Prince Harry, I do find nauseating.
Yeah.
Difficult character to warm to increasingly. But I thought this book is going to be interesting. And it really is. But it's so damning of somebody like Prince William. And he would be so keenly aware of every aspect of his image. That's what jumps out in the whole thing, you know, as a whole, that like this is a family who in their separate houses every morning have the papers set out in front of them, and there's a level of jealousy and paranoia and competition and, oh my God, leak something about them. This is Harry's sense of it. But also, like, William comes out of it terribly, to the point where one thing I always remember about it is there is a period in Harry's life where he very genuinely, you know, he's had a horrific situation with his mother dying, and he finds a great comfort in going to Africa, and he falls in with some conservationists from around the world, but they work obviously to keep animals safe from poachers, and he goes and camps with them for weeks on end every year, tells them things he doesn't tell anyone, etc. And so he's really building this kind of very real affinity with Africa. But back then to the squabble, there's like constant who gets to do what charitable trust and who gets to do this. And so, you know, Princess Anne has to watch Scottish rugby 10 times a year. But the immortal line that William screams at Harry at a certain point when Harry's thinking of getting something going for elephants or something like that is, quote, from the book, "Africa is my thing. You can't have it."
Oh my God.
So listen, this is why I'm thinking when he got the message, Your Highness, this is really going very well. I think you should really just kind of, you know, just be aware. Yeah. I found myself watching the football and also thinking of Africa is my thing.
Look, you can't deny that I'm an Aston Villa fan from Ireland, from Derry, like you mentioned, and there's still something in me that's like, it's nice that it's Aston Villa he supports. Because, you know, it's easy for us to, you know, when we're across the water and we look and be like, that's a bit silly that he's doing that for PR. But then you just look at the trip that they took to Ireland in Galway, playing hurling, trying solo him with a football, drinking pints of Guinness, and we all love that as well. All the Irish people love that too. It is because they're coming from that family. There is something that people warm to when they are shown a bit of that common touch, like you say, and even if it is for PR reasons as well, but it's also a way for people to get their story on the big stage.
Yeah. And I suspect he may not support them initially for PR reasons. It's just, he's only a human being and he must realise this is the moment. What about the game then? We'll talk to Gary Breen in a moment, obviously. This John Duran thing is bit nuts. So is the deal with Duran, who's now scored 5 goals off the bench this season, winners against West Ham, Everton, Leicester, Bayern Munich.
Here's John Duran, takes the shot, Duran! Oh, brilliant! Wow. Oh, my word! The 20-year-old kid from Colombia has just lit up Villa Park with a world-class finish against Bayern Munich. And And just like 42 years ago, I'll say it again, Villa lead Bayern.
Is he destined to be super sub forever? Is he going to have to play pretty soon? Why does he generally not play?
Because Watkins is brilliant, and I know John Durant's stats are incredible, and I'm not taking away from him at all, but Watkins has to play as well. I mean, even the first half, like Upamecano could have been sent off because of what Watkins
Can they not
is
play
doing.
together?
I think it's going to get to that stage. I actually think it is. Now, last night, and a lot of the time they have played together this season, Duran's come on and he scored the winner, but he's been playing with Watkins. They've moved Rodgers out wide.
Okay.
Last night they're playing Bayern. They're under the pump a little bit. They did not need, and they couldn't change the system. They had to make a straight swap striker for striker because Rodgers is sort of dropping into midfield as well. If you have the two of those up there, it just changes that. And Duran too good now to not come on. So even if Watkins is ripping it up, even if Watkins can so obviously play 90 minutes like he always has, never gets injured, Duran still has to come on. He commands a place now. He scores winners. He scored 4 game-winning goals already this season. 3 in the Premier League, which is already the joint top ever across a whole season. That was only in September that he scored 3 game winners off the bench.
He seems to be an interesting character, and even the players are, in so much as players give anything, alluding to that. Emiliano Martinez in particular, who by the way again was awesome. He came back with a different mentality this season. He's willing to work hard, which suggests there's a bit of a backstory there.
Yeah, and obviously after the Liverpool match at the end of last year, John McGinn was interviewed. Duran scored 2 goals, Villa drew 3, so they were 3-1 down. And that's the game that qualified him for the Champions League in the end. But McGinn straight after said he's a bit of a nightmare sometimes, to be honest. He's been a nightmare to have in your team. Now we have to work all week to keep his feet on the ground. So the thing is, I'd be telling my wife about this. She has no interest in football. She's happy for me a Villa win. Apart from that, she doesn't care.
Just makes her life easier.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd be telling her, oh, this guy's a nightmare. I'd be using that lingo now as well. And then once I told her this is last season that he was 19, she was like, for God's sake, come on, he's only 19. And there is something to that. He's come back with a different mentality, but he's also just grown up a few months. You know, he's 20 now. He's had his sort of rebuking. He obviously trusts Emery as well because he is getting a lot out of him. He thinks he should be playing more. Why wouldn't he? Because he's playing so well. But maybe he also respects what Watkins is doing now as well. And like it's amazing that Villa have this problem now. If you go back like 6 years ago, last night was Steve Bruce's last game in charge of Aston Villa, had the cabbage thrown at him. 6 years ago last night, Glenn Whelan was taking a penalty in injury time for Aston Villa. They had thrown away a lead against Preston, who were bottom of the Championship. And Glenn Whelan took his second penalty of his career and missed, obviously. And, you know, and that's the game. That decision is what got Steve Bruce sacked in the end, and Dean Smith came in. And since then, since last night, 6 years ago, Villa went on this journey then to get promoted. They had to win 10 games in a row in the Championship at the end of the season to just qualify for the playoffs. And it was all by the skin of the teeth. Won the playoffs, stayed up in the last game in the Premier League the next season. And then they've just continued to push on.
It is with great love and affection that we welcome Mr. Gary Breen for the first time to Indo Sport. Gary, thank you so much for doing this. We are thrilled you're on board. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. What a lovely introduction. No, I'm thrilled to be here, and we're talking about football. It's been such a great start to the season. There's so much to talk about. It really is. It just the games are coming thick and fast, not to the liking of a lot of the players and managers, but for us on the outside looking in, it's been brilliant.
Well, they're a nice bunch so far based on the messages in. So I think we're creating something nice and friendly and warm, hopefully, for at least the next week.
Brilliant. Let's try. I will do my utmost to add to that.
Okay. Well, the plan was to talk to you about Champions League, but Republic of Ireland has just crowbarred its way on into the top of our conversation. We have a kind of a news live reaction type shorter podcast with Dan McDonald, which people can check out. He was out talking to Heimer Hallgrimsson. The headline news is that Matt Doherty has been left out of the Irish squad. Elsewhere, Jake O'Brien left out as well. He struggled for game time at Everton, and Mark McGuinness is in. There's no Alan Brown, who started against Greece last month off the bench against England. No Callum Robinson either. But I think it's Doherty who's grabbed the headlines. Hallgrimsson, when the thing was opened up to questions, the first one was obviously about Matt Doherty. So your reasons for excluding Doherty from the squad?
Yeah, we knew this question would come, so not easy to motivate that for me. So first of all, we know that Matt Seamus has been here for a long time in the squad. Our most experienced fullbacks, our best fullbacks playing at the highest level for a long time. But unfortunately, they will not play forever. So we need to have a plan B if they are not there. So my job is to get this team to the World Cup in US 2026. And given that next year, 2025, if we end up in a group with 5 nations, all our FIFA windows next year will be official World Cup matches. So this is the only chance to kind of experiment, to give players chance to show what they can do. And that is the reason why we opted to go for other players at this stage. I called Matt yesterday. Obviously, he deserves for an explanation. He was not happy, of course. He wants to play every game for Ireland, but I just ensured him that it's not like we are leaving him out. We're just testing other players. I think because of his experience as well, not to bring him in to have him on the bench. It's better just to give him this camp off.
Thoughts, Gary?
Yeah, interesting in terms of that. Bearing in mind the fact that Seamus is injured, you always feel that you had Matt Doherty as a backup. But if he was to say that it's about an opportunity to experiment, we don't have time to experiment. I know maybe a little has been lost in translation a little bit, and I can understand what he means. But if Matt was to put up an argument in terms of why he's been dropped, you could quite easily say he's been culpable for goals in the last 2 games, not staying with runners and things like that. But it is a bold call. It really is. It gives an opportunity to other players. But, you know, it's interesting to think, like, he's been so hands-off, Heimer, in terms of like how he's approached this Ireland job, giving a lot of the decisions and the training to John O'Shea and Paddy McCarthy. Looks like now he's made a decision. He may well have done his reviews, had a look at all these players. And that's a bold decision straight away. It's certainly one that will grab the headline. And
we don't have time to play the entire press conference, but just like moments after that answer, he was asked about his general approach to Nations League. Like, how much experimentation are we talking about here? What is your kind of philosophy about guiding the team in the short to medium term? And he repeated something he had said a lot last month, which is his logic in terms of putting this team together is, I need to find my first 11 and I need to play them for as many minutes as possible. I need connections on the pitch to develop. So I need to find my first 11 and play them constantly. And that is how I see things. To which Nathan Murphy in the press conference put up his hand and sort of said, sorry, that doesn't make sense in light of the Matt Doherty omission. So, I mean, if you're trying to play your first 11 all the time and you've left him out, that they don't tally. And Hal Grimson sort of was like, oh, well, look, it's a mix of both. It's a mix of both. It's Dan McDonald's sense, and people can listen to that podcast as well in the feed, was, look, this is a drop-in. And he's just trying to be diplomatic about it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Dan is so good in terms of the insight he gives us being in and around those press conferences, and you get a feel more than what's the actual words that may well be presented to us in print. But my immediate reaction is, yeah, he's been dropped. Simple as that. You know, as a player, you know it. A manager may well come to you and go, say, listen, I'm just going to try other lads out. And you think, well, you'll be trying them out if you're happy with me. You know what I mean? We have to win games as such. And I know it's going to be so difficult to qualify for the World Cup in terms of the fact that the numbers associated with it, but our seeding is so important, and it looks like, you know, it's all going to be on those games, as he said, in the future in terms of trying to qualify from when that draw is made. But on the flip side of that, though, Joe, I don't mind him saying this, and I need to find this 11 and I need to find it early. The very fact that he feels that Matt is not going to be in that 11 is the reason why he's made that decision.
Yes. So, I mean, look, if the complaint last month was, Heimer, you're a little bit standoffish.
Yeah.
He's taking control now. I think that's the message.
Yeah, and I genuinely think he might have felt a little bit put back by the fact that we were saying, well, listen, why are you so hands-off? Sorry, we need a manager to really impact straight away. You know, we're at such a low ebb in terms of where we've been in the last 3 or 4 years, the confidence of the players, and of course, it's seeping through to the players now, because even after that game against Greece, they were so despondent. They were actually saying in press conferences, we don't have a world-class player, and you're thinking, okay, that may well be the case, but don't admit it. You know, show that you are fighting. Don't be so kind of like accepting of the situation. Manager's made a bold call. I hope now that he shows that type of front-footedness as a manager and really leads by example now, because this squad needs it.
Well, we have a lot of Ireland talk next week, so
Yeah.
keep our powder dry. Champions League last night, plenty of things going on. Real Madrid were beaten by Lille. That is their first defeat in 37 games. Liverpool beat Bologna, a perfectly good team to go with their Milan win. That's 8 wins and 9 for Liverpool. Slot afterwards saying was not an easy one, in my opinion. Bologna made it very difficult, similar to Atalanta, man marking all over the pitch. But a sense that they didn't quite hit the heights necessarily either, Liverpool. But listen, they're winning games. What stole the night, obviously, last night was Aston Villa. Here is Unai Emery. I want to get your sense of the job this guy has done, because it really does feel remarkable. But here is, as you can imagine, very, very happy Unai Emery after the game.
I am so happy the response we are having here with our supporters, and of course we are trying to transmit them our energy, our game plan, connecting with them, because if they are connecting with us, transmitting their push, their energy to us on the field, I think here we can feel really strong. And we were until January or February we were winning here 15 or 16 matches in a row here in Villa Park. Was really amazing. And when we were achieving it was through our supporters here in Villa Park. Without them, it was impossible to get it.
So talk to us about him, Gary.
I'm so impressed with him. I've always have been, and I always felt that the job that kind of the way it played out at Arsenal was just not befitting of him. And I think a lot of things were made of that. His communication skills weren't particularly good. But the fact that he stepped away from Arsenal, went back, rebuilt his kind of reputation. And then when Villa got him, I just thought, wow, what an appointment. What an upgrade on Steven Gerrard in terms of that. It's amazing that they were able to get him. And I think he's just proved, Joe, like since he's been at Villa, the impact he made straight away. He is an elite level manager that the top clubs in the world must be thinking, I'm frustrated that he has slipped through our hands as such. But in terms of what he's done to that Villa team, and that's not necessarily just in terms of the players he's brought in, but it's the players that he inherited, how he's elevated their games on a personal level. It's been a remarkable job that he has done, and it just seems to get better. Topped off by that performance last night, you get a European giant like Bayern Munich coming to the ground. Villa Park was absolutely jumping. It looked like it was like the hottest ticket in town in Birmingham. There was so many supporters saying they were desperate to try and get one. And then they put on a performance like that and a sensational winning goal. I mean, it was just a brilliant night for everyone involved.
Yeah, it did look amazing. Players often cite Villa Park as beautiful place to play their football. I've never been. I can see it on TV. I mean, it looks nice, but maybe I'm somewhat missing something. The way people talk about Villa Park, that is my favourite ground to play at.
It's got that traditional feel, Joe. If you think about going to the old Hybrid and walking in, it just seems to have that type of stature. I would have been playing for Villa's big rivals, Birmingham, Wolves, throughout my career, Coventry. But you did know that when you went there, it was a great place to play football. And it just seems like it's electric up there at the moment. It just is. They've got low owners who are wealthy. They've got some financial muscle behind them. I know it'll be dictated to by the governance in terms of how much you spend. But they're on the up, Villa. It's not easy to say that as a former Blues player, Wolves and Coventry, but they are. They genuinely are. And they got a manager that I just can't speak highly enough of him. I think he's brilliant.
There was a dynamic in the game, which I suspect as a defender you were watching with interest, whereby Bayern, and this is not new with Bayern, and they have had success with this type of defending. But if people can imagine, there is a situation where, like, routinely, it is Upamecano, who was lucky to stay on the pitch, and Watkins, and they are like in the centre circle, like they're even inside the Villa half. Sometimes Upamecano is not even goal side of a player as fast as Watkins, and anytime Villa got possession, it just felt like, God, there's a chance to play him in. It should be like panic stations, and this is obviously a very well thought out, deliberate thing that Bayern are doing and have done for several seasons. Do you kind of think this is just...
You sound like a grisly old centre half, as if like you shouldn't be doing that.
But I mean, I would have no problems whatsoever if you say to me, do you know what? I'll be giving myself 5 yards with Watkins, and you know what? I'll be pulling back someone with me. I don't know. There's times you look at it and you think that can't be right. There's got to be another way. But what are we missing here?
Well, what we're seeing is like that positions are evolving so much in terms of the requirements of them, and like it's not just at centre back, but it's not something we haven't seen before. We think about Ange's Spurs team, and when he initially went up against Chelsea last season, it was a complete nonsense that the centre halves were just standing on the halfway line, even though the midfielder or the player in possession had time to get his head up and make that pass. And I think we're seeing it again this season. You think about how good Spurs were at United with Van der Ven playing. And ultimately, people say straight away, yeah, because Van der Ven is an absolute flying machine. But it's not even about that. It doesn't matter how quick you are. But Upamecano is a quick defender. But if your body shape's not right, you're never going to win a race. And I've made this point before where I'd have played centre half with Kenny Cunningham, and he had no pace whatsoever. And that's not me like slagging him off as such. But I rarely seen him get run. It was incredible. And he'd always be trying to push the back line up. As soon as the ball got played back or square, we'd squeeze up a couple of yards. He was always doing it. And yet it was about body position. So it's not something that's particularly new, but I think it's the fact that we're now seeing that it can invariably be one centre half against one centre forward and no fullbacks covering. More often than not, those fullbacks are in advanced wide positions like wingers. So it is a kind of new way of defending. I thoroughly enjoy it, but I do know the requirements of it. And it's not necessarily pace. You just got to be able to read situations well, and you've got to be able to get your body shape right. And at times, Upamecano up against Watkins just didn't do that.
That's interesting, because my next question was going to be, is that just the death knell for defenders without rapid pace? But not necessarily.
No, I genuinely don't think it is. I think some of the best defenders we've seen, like with very little pace. You think about Steve Bruce, who would have been my partner as a young centre half at Birmingham. Wasn't particularly quick, but I didn't see anyone running him as well. It's about reading of the game. And my only issue with it is the likes of Company or those type of new coaches who have a specific way of playing, is that, and even though he was a great centre half himself, he's not coaching it well enough into those centre halves to be able to cope with it. That's abundantly clear. I think you need to know exactly and recognise when you need to open that shoulder up to make sure you're facing the way the ball's playing. You need to be able to adjust, drop off of both hips and stuff like that. They're things you should be coaching. Didn't seem like it had been done last night.
Did you learn a lot from Bruce?
Oh, I learned an awful lot. And I would have learned a lot about from Kenny Cunningham as well. And I think also, you think about Mick McCarthy playing for Ireland, not particularly quick, but that defensive line with him and Kevin Moran would have squeezed high. They would have been having the likes of Lineker running in behind them, Van Basten. They weren't sitting on the edge of their box, were they? Keep them under pressure, Jack. Centre half squeeze the pitch so midfielders can get close and make it difficult. So it's not something that's completely new, but I just think we're just seeing extremes of it now.
It's extremes. It's the 1v1 aspect, I think.
Yeah,
it is. I take your point on Kenny, who we're all friends with and we all love, but I guarantee you if Kenny was in a 1v1 on the halfway line and 80 yards of space around him, he might be saying, here, Gary, you want to kind of hang back with me there, pal?
Well, listen, I think his first call would be like about 2 passes before that to get me back into covering. But do you know what it would be, Joe? And this is something that he probably has from his Gar upbringing, is that he'd be comfortable in a 1v1 situation because he wouldn't make it a race.
Okay.
He'd use his body to block. He'd use his arms so that centre forward who's quicker than him can't get through the gears. That's the difference. And I think he would have played defender as a Gaelic player himself. You learn about those 1v1 combats that at times in football, and certainly in eras gone by, it was all about grizzy old centre halves getting their fullbacks so narrow, getting their midfielders to sit on top of them for a screen. Those days are gone.
You've had a couple of Arsenal games lately for Premier Sports.
Yeah.
Something good's happening here. Give us your general impressions just now.
Joe, something special is happening here. It really is. And I felt at the time at the beginning of the season, I felt, okay, now how do you bridge the gap, which is so difficult to do, bearing in mind Liverpool got 97 points, still didn't win the title. This is what you're up against. The fact that Pep Guardiola has averaged 91 points over those 7 seasons for City. So the challenge is massive. How can you make those small gains? Arsenal have had a brilliant last couple of years where the belief is growing. It's gone to another level again. I think you've seen that in the performance against PSG in the Champions League, where it was so efficient, so controlled. The purists may well argue that it's pragmatic, but it's not. And it's in stark contrast to how other teams are playing. If you want to be successful, you need to be defensively strong. And this Arsenal team are. But there's so many caveats as to why they are where they are. And everyone would maybe add pressure to Arteta by saying 5 years in, he's got to win a trophy now. Now, I would argue on that point. I'd say, yes, the reason he must win a trophy is because of how strong this Arsenal team is right now. But I would counter that by saying, well, what if he doesn't win it? What if he now ends up 1 point behind City at the end of the season? what are you going to say then? That he's failed? Arsenal as a club from top to bottom are in such synergy. It's incredible. It's the hottest ticket in town in terms of London. You just cannot get. And the Arsenal fans, where they were fighting each other before towards the back end of Wenger and what was happening with Unai Emery in terms of trying to fix that mess, are now just absolutely loving what they're seeing. And I love, Joe, I know you're probably going to ask me, I love the fact that someone as quiet and as unassuming as Saka has now come out and said, we're going to win this league.
Yeah. Publicly, you like it?
I like it. And I know people will go, well, you're adding pressure, but I don't think it's a flippant comment. I don't think it's a throwaway comment. And what are we going to, what do we want him to say ultimately if the question is posed to him? Do you think you can win it? We don't want to hear the usual generic stuff. Oh, take one game at a time. He said, yeah, if you want me to ask, and I'm giving you my honest opinion, I think we're going to win it. And I don't think there's many people who would disagree. We know how great City are, but it just feels like they have got some difficult moments as Arsenal are really in the ascendancy on their shoulder.
There is something almost disarming about the fact that for Arteta, cutting-edge, technical type, and this team who can play such lovely technical football are currently loving scoring from set pieces more than anything. And like they even love celebrating. I was saying the other day, like yesterday, like with the goal the other night, where they're all dashing across their men from the back post, and in it goes. And like they're sort of like in a flying V formation, and they just keep running and celebrating with each other. And they're just like, our favourite goal to score is a set piece.
Joe, do you know when you watch them, okay?
Yeah.
And they get that corner, it's sheer panic in the opposition.
Well,
do you remember
I was going to
back
ask,
in the day when Rory Delap used to get the ball for a throw-in for Stoke? And the opposition would rather give away a corner than give away a throw-in because they knew what was coming. It's so meticulously designed in terms of, even watch Saka taking it on the left, the left foot in swinger, and Rice on the other. It's all like breathing patterns before they take it. It's so reminiscent of like a play in an American football game where they set it all up. There's triggers, bang, let's go, and they do it. And it's incredible how good they actually are at it. And it just shows you that those fine margins, and you think about, well, I certainly think about Arteta and his upbringing as a footballer. He came out of Barcelona, so you think he'd be that tight, and he's worked with Pep, and he was a player for Arsene Wenger. So you think you think he'd be like veering towards that type of football, but it feels a little bit like as if he's adopted when he played for Everton under David Moyes in terms of being so hard to beat.
Yes.
And they must obviously identify that we can do all we want to achieve by making ourselves hard to beat and then allowing that quality that they do have. Saka, he goes past people as if he's tiptoeing past them. It's incredible. Havertz is such a success story, and there's so many of them. It's remarkable what Arteta's done. I wouldn't be mad into all these kind of like these David Brent type of things that he does with the players about, a pickpocketer and all these type of things, but he's doing brilliant with them in terms of getting the maximum out of these players. And there'll be so many people who will have said, why are you signing Havertz for 60 million? Well, he's proving now why he's done it.
Yeah.
They would have said, why are you signing Odegaard, who had struggled at Real Madrid when you had Joe Willock? They let Joe Willock go to Newcastle. He scores about 9 goals on the spin for them. The pressure's on Odegaard. Well, now you're seeing it because Odegaard is an incredible player, playmaker, does everything that Ozil did, but runs around and presses and is an incredible leader as captain as well. And it's just not like those guys. There's so many of those stories. Ramsdale, why did you feel the need to upgrade to a goalkeeper? The reason why is that Ramsdale is a very good shot stopper, but by his own admission, struggles with concentration. As soon as Arteta must hear that, he's thinking, we're developing a top-level footballing team here where a goalkeeper is not going to be worked all the time, so his concentration level will have to be high. And Rice proved him right this way as well. I just can't speak highly enough of Arsenal. I know people go, well, you're an Arsenal fan as a kid. It's not about that.
Sure.
I just admire when I see teams who are getting every ounce of ability out of them, especially when you see other teams like United, just going from one problem to another.
Just one last one on how teams are defending Arsenal at set pieces. So,
yeah.
2 things jump to mind, and it's difficult without TV pictures, but against Manchester City, as I sat watching at home, and Gabriel's on the penalty spot in a kind of 1v1 with, I think it was Doku bizarrely originally, but then Walker the second time. But like what jumped out, say, like if you compare the 2 goals we're sort of alluding to, that one against Man City and the one last night. So against Man City, they're in this kind of zonal defensive formation where everybody seems to be at the front post, and Gabriel sort of says, okay, I'll go back post. It seemed odd to me. And then last night, in terms of the defensive setup, again, if people didn't see the game, you've got all of the Arsenal players grouped together at the back post. You've got, again, PSG in a kind of zonal defensive formation. To be fair, unlike Man City, they were spread more evenly across the box. But somebody like Barcola, who's a very attacking player, was at the front post, and he's at a disadvantage anyway because, okay, Saka has a head of steam. Saka's going front post and he's running across Barcola. It strikes me as really hard for Barcola to suddenly get off his heels and go with Saka not to get ahead of him. You put the two things together, I kind of think, I'm not sure they're defending these brilliantly either.
No, do you know what? I've been so disappointed with how teams have set up. And ultimately, when you're a defensive coach, what you want to encourage and instill in those players defending that situation is you want to enjoy it. You have to say to them, their mindset has to change. It has to go from being, please don't let the ball come to me, to please let the ball come to me, and attacking it at its highest point. And it's just sheer panic. You can just see it. The only team I've seen do reasonably well, even though they got caught out right at the end, is Leicester at the weekend. I think they faced something like
17.
Double figures in terms of the
17 was the goal, yeah.
17. And do you know what they did, Joe? The ones who were in those zonal positions didn't even open their body. They just stood there and said, I'm attacking this ball at the highest point, and they went and got it. They didn't get affected by all that running around and that nonsense that Arsenal like to create. They like to create that sense of panic. Last year, if you remember, Ben White would be grabbing the goalkeeper's wrists and he'd be just going into a meltdown because someone had come anywhere near him. Now with the new remit and laws, you can't affect the goalkeeper like that, but they're doing it in other ways. And that's what I would be coaching. I thought Leicester did it really well, but unfortunately it got to about the 95th minute and they got succumbed to that one at the back post where Trossard, of all people, is one that gets the contact and gets the own goal off of Ndidi. But I don't know. I just think as much as we're talking about attacking set pieces, whoever's coaching these teams defensively needs to do it better. And there is a caveat to that, Joe, because look at Arsenal's physique. When you used to play up against the great Arsenal teams, think about the 98 double winning team. I'd be in the tunnel against them and everyone was 6'4". And then even their creative players like Anelka, Bergkamp, and later on Henry, they're all big units as well. So that's what you've got to counter. And that's what he's identified, Arteta. He's gone so far away from the way Wenger was towards the end and recruiting a team that looked like a Barcelona light version. He's getting like big guys, physical, really commanding figures who can play. The perfect blend for me anyway.
Just the last one, Gary. I know you're doing the Manchester United game tonight for Premier. They're away to Porto. Yeah. And then they've Aston Villa Sunday. So obviously, look, the Porto aspect, a lot of people may be listening to this on Friday. So we won't dwell on it. But certainly, as we're talking here on Thursday, given what happened against Spurs, when I saw it, God, it's Porto away. Oh, then it's Villa. I thought, this could be coming into an international break. Eric Ten Hag needs to be careful here.
Oh, listen, in terms of getting that Porto game, they don't have any of those star names like they had before. They're third in their league at the moment, but they're in good form. They're a solid team. But it's a difficult away game. There's no doubt about it. And they're Villa as well. And they need a reaction more than anything. They need to show something about trying to build their way back up. Ten Hag's talking about using the anger. He talked about using the madness. That won't be enough. They need to use their heads. In terms of watching United, I just have not got an idea in terms of how they're trying to play. I don't know how they're trying to recruit. You've got front guys who can't press, Garnacho, Rashford, Xerxes. They just can't get near to press, and then they try. And then you've got Eriksen, Bruno likewise. And the reason they do that then means that you've got a back line, centre halves who are not quick, so they drop off. So there's a huge amount of space in midfield, and it's something we saw last year. I don't see it getting any better. In fact, I only see it getting worse this season. And although I think Ten Hag can be a good manager elsewhere, I just don't see it happening at Manchester United. I'm sorry, I genuinely don't. And I feel that even if they were to win these next two away games, I think you're just papering over it, the plaster as such. I don't see any future in terms of how they're going forward. I like the fact that the new owners not the new owners, but the new infrastructure in terms of putting the best in class, Dan Ashworth, all them type of guys said, okay, we're going to put a structure in place and we're going to give you, Ten Hag, the opportunity to be successful underneath that on the back of winning that FA Cup final. But 6 games in, it just doesn't look like it's going to work. I genuinely don't. And the fear that I would have for Ten Hag is that it's these 2 away games and then that international break where everyone will sit down and do a kind of a breather, take stock of what's actually happening. And I think, as we've seen so many times, that's when the managers are their most vulnerable.
Brilliant chat. Thanks so much.
Pleasure. Thanks, mate.
Gary Breen there, talking all things Villa, Ireland and Arsenal. So that is this edition done and dusted. Dan McDonald's going to join us later on. He is, well, I would think around now as we record, listening to Heimer Hallgrimsson. So we're going to check in with Dan and hear what he had to say. There is Rovers obviously in action this evening as well, not to mention against Shelbourne on Sunday. So we'll chat to Dan about that. And it turns out League of Ireland clubs, it's an exclusive story Dan had today on the back of the newspaper. Like a bonanza, a UEFA bonanza of €350,000 every year for every Premier Division club ad infinitum. Whereas before they were getting 70 grand a year. That has now jumped up to 350 grand a year owing to the Swiss Champions League model, more money for all the big clubs and a sense of trying to keep everybody else happy, voting blocks, all these kind of things. So a huge windfall for the Premier Division clubs. So that's something we'll touch on with Dan as well. Here's a very childish question to finish on. Who is your favourite Aston Villa player? I feel like that's the kind of thing you'd ask a 10-year-old, but I'm going to ask you.
Well, I'm all up for that. Yeah, it used to be Jack Grealish, obviously, but broke my heart. Yeah, my only DM to Jack Grealish on Instagram.
Stop.
Just said, "I love you."
Stop. What age were you in?
May 2019. So
for God's sake.
5 years ago. I wasn't that young, Joe.
That is mortifying.
Yeah, we got it promoted. And I wish I didn't send it, but I did. I can't delete it.
Do you still have a soft spot for him? I do. I like him regardless, even of the Ireland thing. I think he's great.
I do. I feel sorry for the player he's become. He's become this robotic.
I wonder, did he watch that game last night and think?
Yeah. And I wish I would stop wondering that. You know, I'm watching that atmosphere thinking,
I still love you.
Exactly. You know, wanting to text him saying, "Did you see me on the TV?"
Has anybody filled that hole in your heart?
No, Watkins is getting there, but Grealish was just different levels. And the reason Watkins is so, likeable, he scores so many goals, assists so many goals, but he's just worked so hard as well. I mean, I used to love Andy Vyman. That was the levels I was at because he just gave everything. Watkins gives that, but he also has the talent to back it up.
The most cringeworthy, pathetic message you've sent to a footballer, Indo Sport Podcast at Independent.ie. Okay, we're done.